Hello and welcome to this masterclass on question 3 of English Language Paper 1. We are continuing with our study of the Lovely Bones extract this lesson, but instead of analysing language like we did last lesson, this time we are focusing on structure. So to check that you are really confident with the difference between language and structure, can you organise under 2 headings these techniques? Some of them are language techniques, some of them are structural techniques. Pause this video and see if you can work out which is which. So at the end, you should have a column of structural techniques and a column of language techniques. Pause it now and give it a go. Okay, let's have a look. How did you get on? So the structural techniques that you should be thinking about are dialogue, how the text opens, a rise in action, so something that's creating tension or a problem is introduced, action or climax, so something happens or there's a high point in tension, a fall in action where things start to get resolved and then finally an ending, or there's a cliffhanger which leaves us needing more information. It leaves us in a very tense situation. Flashback, the order of paragraphs, sentence order, and the narrative perspective, so who is speaking. Those are all of the structural techniques, okay? Please make sure that you have not confused the language techniques. If for this question you write about language, you will not get marks, even if you say things that are wonderful and correct. You really do have to focus on the structural techniques. Okay, so we're carrying on by looking at the Lovely Bones extract that we've looked at for question 1 and 2. Reminder, the narrator is a teenage girl who has been murdered, and it's super important that we understand this extract. Now, a super helpful tip for this question is, as you are reading, to make a note of what happens in each paragraph. Particularly be on the lookout for shifts in focus and think about where tension is created. So I'll have a read of the extract. I'll just present that now so you can follow along, but start thinking about what is happening in each paragraph. If you have the ability to make a note on the extract, which you can find in your Google Classroom, then do that, or just make your own notes, just write paragraph 1 and a bullet point for what happens in it. The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, published 2002. The extract below is the opening of a novel. The narrator is a teenage girl who has been murdered. My name was Salmon, like the fish. First name, Susie. I was 14 when I was murdered on December 6, 1973. In newspaper photos of missing girls from the 70s, most looked like me, white girls with mousy brown hair. This was before kids of all races and genders started appearing on milk cartons or in the Daily Mail. It was still back when people believed things like that didn't happen. In my junior high yearbook was a quote from a Spanish poet my sister had turned me onto, Juan Ramon Jimenez. It went like this: if they give you ruled paper, write the other way. I chose it because it expressed my contempt for my structured surrounding, a la the classroom, and because, not being some dopey quote from a rock group, I thought it marked me as literary. I was a member of the chess club and chem club and burned everything I tried to make in Miss Delminico's home economics class. My favourite teacher was Mr. Bott, who taught biology and liked to animate the frogs and crawfish we had to dissect by making them dance in their waxed pans. I wasn't killed by Mr. Bott, by the way. Don't think every person you're going to meet in here is a suspect. That's the problem. You never know. Mr. Bott came to my memorial, as, may I add, did almost the entire junior high school. I was never so popular. And cried quite a bit. He had a sick kid. We all knew this, so when he laughed at his own jokes, which were rusty way before I had him, we laughed too, forcing it sometimes just to make him happy. His daughter died a year and a half after I did. She had leukemia, but I never saw her in my heaven. The murderer was a man from our neighbourhood. My mother liked his border flowers, and my father talked to him once about fertiliser. My murderer believed in old-fashioned things like eggshell and coffee grounds, which he said his own mother had used. My father came home smiling, making jokes about how the man's garden might be beautiful, but it would stink to high heaven once a heatwave hit. But on December 6, 1973, it was snowing, and I took a shortcut through the cornfield back from junior high. It was dark out because the days were shorter in winter, and I remember how the broken cornstalks made my walk more difficult. The snow was falling lightly, like a flurry of small hands, and I was breathing through my nose until it was running so much that I had to open my mouth. 6 feet from where Mr. Harvey stood, I stuck my tongue out to taste a snowflake. "Don't let me startle you," Mr. Harvey said. Of course, in a cornfield in the dark, I was startled. After I was dead, I thought about how there had been the light scent of cologne in the air, but that I had not been paying attention or thought it was coming from one of the houses up ahead. "Mr. Harvey," I said, "you're the older Sam girl, right?" "Yes. How are your folks?" Although the eldest in my family and good at acing a science quiz, I had never felt comfortable with adults. "Fine," I said. I was cold, but the natural authority of his age and the added fact that he was a neighbour and had talked to my father about fertiliser rooted me to the spot. "I've built something back here," he said. "Would you like to see?" "I'm sort of cold, Mr. Harvey," I said, "and my mum likes me to be home before dark." "It's after dark, Susie," he said. I wish now that I had told him this was weird. I had never told him my name. Okay, so can you just take a minute and check that you have gone through each paragraph and managed to make a note of what you see, what you learn, what information we're given. In our section on language, we talked about the fact that you might want to think of the 5 W's when you first read the question. So thinking about what happens in the extract, where the extract is set, why things happen. Are you comfortable with this extract so far? Okay. So you should have noticed that we find out that she's dead, school days and what she enjoyed about them, information on her favourite teacher, not her murderer, then the revelation of who her murderer is and the relationship the parents had with him, and then the end, recounting the evening of her death. Okay, that's really important. That is the basics of what happens in each paragraph. Okay, why are we in here? So we want to be really clear about that information, because then our question is this. Now we've heard the whole of the source. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? You should comment on what the writing focuses our attention on at the beginning of the extract, how and why this changes as the extract develops, and any other structural features that interest you. Can you now please bug this question? What is the command word? What are the key words? And is there anything in the bullet points that can help you? So if it was me, I would have underlined or boxed how, and above that, I would have written method, because that's going to remind me that I need to be thinking about structural techniques. I'm definitely going to underline structure and interest the reader, because those are the key focuses of this question. A reminder that this question asks you to refer to the whole of the source. At the start of this session, we had a think about some of the structural techniques that you could identify. Here they are again. I'd like you to pause this video now and see what of these techniques you can find. So which of these techniques can you find? And also, can you answer the questions in the box for these techniques? Because that's what's going to make up your analysis. So pause this video now, go through the extract and see which of these structural techniques you can find. Okay, how did you get on? Just by going through and identifying what is happening in each paragraph, you will notice the shifts in focus. That's why that's such an important thing to do. So you can see how she's shifting. The next thing you want to think about is, why does she shift the focus in that way? Why does the author tell us at the start of the extract that Susie Salmon is dead? Why doesn't she tell us at the end? Why does she then talk about her school days and her favourite teacher? Why is that information given to us at that point in the text? Midway through, she reveals who her murderer is and that her parents knew him. Why does she do that then? Why does she give us that information about her parents' relationship with her murderer before she tells us about the night she was murdered? What does it do? Some of my ideas are that she introduces the narrator as dead at the beginning to shock us and engage us. I think she shifts the focus to her school days to reveal what sort of person the narrator is. It helps us to understand the narrator and empathise with her. Why does she tell us about her parents' relationship with the murderer before she tells us about the evening she was killed? I think it's because she wants us to understand why she trusted him, because she knew her parents knew him, so she thought he was a safe man. Think about that last sentence. How does it link to the sentence at the start of the extract? The first sentence in the extract is, "My name was Salmon, like the fish, first name Susie." The last sentence in the extract, "I had never told him my name." Why does the author do that? These techniques are all structural. So there are loads of shifts in focus. There's definitely flashbacks. This is not a chronological order. Why not? What information is withheld? By the end of this extract, Would you say it's ending at a high point of tension? Is it a cliffhanger? These questions are the questions that you need to be able to answer in order to be successful in this exam question. So your task is to look at the whole of the source and think about how the writer has structured the text to interest you as a reader. Now you've got two options in this video. The first option is having a go at slow writing your response. If you really struggle with this question, you can pause the video here and use these sentence starters to write your answer. This is a lot of structure and support. If you want to push yourself a little bit more, we are going to have a think about how you can structure your answer. So, you need to start your answer at the start of the text. Then think about the middle and then the end. That's the basic structure for writing about structure. Beginning, middle, end. Within that, you then want to think about what you are saying about the beginning, middle, and end. If you start your answer with overall, the structure creates an atmosphere of tension or a mood of fear, you're going to get a mark straight away for being analytical because you're already thinking about what the order of the information is doing. Your next step is to name the technique. So the technique being used might be introducing the character, a shift in focus, a flashback, some dialogue. That table that we've just looked at, you should know all of those techniques. If you don't know them, a good revision tip would be to pause the video here and make a mind map. Or do look, cover, write, check until you're really confident that you understand those structural techniques. Really, really important for structure is thinking about where in the text is the technique and why is it there. Where in the text is the technique, why is it there? So like I was saying, why do we find out she's dead at the start, not at the end? Why do we find out her parents knew the murderer? Then think about the impact. And we always use rule for structure because it's about what the reader realizes, understands, learns, or what is established because of the information given. And then you can use overall effect and author's intentions. So why is the author doing it? And you can see here that I have put some sentence starters for using that structure. So if you feel a little bit more confident, you can use this structure to answer the question, or this structure. This one's my favourite. You pick, pause the video at the place that's best for you, high level of support, low level of support, medium level of support. Have a go at answering the question. You have got 10 minutes. Pause the video, give yourself 10 minutes. You're aiming for 3 paragraphs. Pause now and have a go. Okay, how did you get on? Here is your mark scheme. It is very, very similar to the mark scheme for question 2. Those words, some attempts, clear, relevant, perceptive, detailed. Some attempt to comment on the effect of structural features. Some subject terminology, not always used appropriately. compared to explains clearly the effect of writer's choice of structural features, selects a range of textual detail, makes clear and accurate use of subject terminology in labelling those structural techniques. Are you talking about 2 to 3 moments in the text? And then 7 to 8 marks. Again, it's about the level of detail you go into in your analysis, but it's also about picking out really sophisticated techniques. So in this case, perhaps linking the opening and the ending line would be an example of judicious textual detail. Let's look at a waggle. So this is a great answer, and I want you to look at the colour coding that I have put into it. The blue is the structural technique, the yellow is the effect on the reader, and the green is the author's intentions. So you can see how I'm sticking to the structure. The opening focuses our attention on the character of Susie Salmon, like the fish, and her death. The writer deliberately opens the scene with a shocking piece of dialogue. I was 14 when I was murdered. This shocks the reader and immediately creates interest because of a number of unusual things. For instance, Susie, who sounds so friendly, was murdered, and she's directly addressing us, the reader. The author purposefully withholds information at this point about how and why Susie was murdered. This intrigues the reader and encourages them to read on to find out the answers. The author then shifts the focus on introducing the character of Susie in more detail. She is described as a white girl with mousy brown hair who is a member of chess club and chem club, and revealing her likes and dislikes. This information about the character reveals what sort of person she is and enables the reader to picture how she looks. The author provides this information to help the reader understand and relate to the character, and then they're more likely to care what has happened to her. The closing paragraph draws our attention to a single line that creates tension and a tone of regret. She says, I wish now that I had known this was weird. I had never told him my name, signalling that the writer wanted to understand this text is written after her death. This means we feel even more sympathy for Susie because she could have avoided her fate if she'd known this information. The final paragraph can be connected with the first, as both talk about her murder and emphasise the writer's intention to structure the novel in a non-chronological way. This interests us because we realise this novel isn't about who's killed Susie, it's about what's happened after she died. Okay, so you can see in this answer, it is really, really clear all the way through that this person is picking out structural techniques in blue, talking about their effect on the reader, and then explaining the author's intentions. What, how, why? This is the simplest way of structuring your answer for this question. The first 2 paragraphs put this answer into 5 to 6 marks. The last paragraph, where we really start to understand that non-chronological structure and about where the writer is going with this, is what moves it into that perceptive analysis into 70 marks. If your answer is more like the first 2 paragraphs, you're looking at 5 to 6 marks. Think about how much detail you've got in the tone for the writer's intentions to move into 7 to 8 marks. If you have not managed to talk about the author's intentions, probably in the 3 to 4 band, 3 to 4 marks. So think about trying to include the author's intentions. Looking at this waggle and the mark scheme, and you find yourself improving your answer to this question. Do is go into your Google Classroom, find a sample paper and have a go at question 3 using what you've learned from this session. Practice is the best way to improve. It helps with your timing and it helps with your confidence. That's that's it on structure from me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or your English teacher. I hope that was helpful. I hope you found those structures helpful. Please feel free to go back in the video and look at those again. That's what you need to know off by heart, how you answer this question. What changes is the text you get, but what you can work on is making sure that you know exactly what you're going to do with that text. Happy revising!